Happy Friday, one and all. It's a express edition of the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, too, at the Team 980. I'm not a dumbass, Craig Hoffman. Anthony, I don't know if you heard the end of the Russell Show, but that's basically how that... He was calling... Sometimes Dumb Dumb of the Day gets a little sideways, and Chris is just calling everybody an idiot and a moron. And then he's like, Craig's next. He's not dumb. And I'm like, thanks, Chris.
I wasn't sure if you were the dum-dum of the day or he was calling you.
No. Honestly, what a bit that would be. How do we earn ourselves the dum-dum of the day on the Russell Show? I will say, actually, speaking of, real quick, before we get to the Bobby Wagner thing. Hold on, I got to pull this up. This is never read the comments style. But I got a comment that was really funny, and my response had to do with the Russell Show. Someone goes... Here we go. It's a long comment. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but they're making an analogy. And he goes, I always prefer prime rib at the supermarket, but cannot afford it when it is marked at $25 a pound and consistently buy the family pack of sirloin burger at $6 a pound. If I overspend on meat, I cannot get the best desserts, etc. Sometimes I can get prime rib at $10 a pound. And I think he's talking about budgets in terms of the Commanders and the salary cap. But I just go, sir, I think this comment about beef prices was intended for the Chris Russell Show. You're in the wrong place.
I think Chris would have appreciated that.
I think Chris is probably in his car right now laughing. Or is he out in the bullpen?
Yeah, he's out there.
All right, well, I want you to cut that audio up, and I want you to send it to him. And we await our response eagerly from the Chris Russell program.
I got you.
All right. End of our show yesterday. Commanders re-signed Bobby Wagner. News breaks. We were able to respond and give our first take at it then. But Bobby has actually spoken on a conference call to the media today, so we have a little bit of sound from Wagner as well. But the more I think about it, the more I love this move. And the more I'm just like, can you please do the same thing for Zach Ertz? And I realize that Ertz is going to be a little more expensive, and Bobby is more expensive than he was last year as well. But it's because those guys earned it. They played well on the field, and they led in a level in the locker room that was one of the key differences in the team last year, and one of the key reasons why they made a run to the NFC Championship game. Ultimately, sports and team sports and individual sports too, but more so in a team setting, are about, can you get the absolute best out of players as an organization? And there's an unbelievable litany of factors that go into that, starting with drafting good players. Like, what's their ceiling to begin with? Who are they as people? Are they going to do the work on their end of it? But there are environmental factors as well in terms of what you actually get out of the human beings that you are employing. And this is sometimes where and this is frankly why I enjoyed my conversation with Cynthia Freeland so much last week at the Combine, which feels like it was 7 weeks ago, but I think was actually last week. And she was talking about how much, even though she's an analytics person, what DQ brings to a locker room matters. Because I've used this analogy before, but if you've got a bunch of guys that are super talented and they're 10 out of 10 talented, but your environment only gets 7 out of 10, and I got a bunch of other dudes that are 8 out of 10, but my environment gets 8 out of 10 out of them every time, who would you rather have? The 10 out of 10 potential guy that gets you fired? Or the 8 out of 10 potential guy that is consistent and you can win with every single day? And when we talk about the environmental factors of the Washington Commanders last year, Jaden Daniels and what he brought to the quarterback position was some level of a factor. Adam Peters and what he did from the top, and Josh Harris, what he did from the top, those guys are huge. But I think the two single biggest ones are Dan Quinn and what he brought to the locker room as the head coach, the standard that he set, the standard that he demanded, the standard that he got out of people. And I think people might go, wait, demanded? Doesn't seem like a demanding kind of guy. He is, but it's not I'll yell at you in old school, like chew your face off type of coach. It's a different demand. You have people that you work hard for because you fear them, and that's only that's temporary. That has a limited shelf life. And there's people that you fear, or that you fear of letting down, that you work hard for because you respect. And Dan Quinn is that kind of guy. And another guy who's exactly like that in terms of leadership in the locker room was Bobby Wagner. And the term that I have used for Bobby is that he ultimately becomes a force multiplier. he's someone who not only is still a good football player, and we can talk about how good he was last year in a second, but he's someone who makes everyone else better. If he is just merely here, and God forbid he gets hurt and he misses the entire season, he still is probably worth the money they paid him. He's that much of an impact in the meeting rooms and the locker rooms, and watching him work and go about whatever it is his job that day. And the way he's taking care of his body and the way that he's prepared and the way that he has done things over the years, he has been available for most of his career, and certainly would anticipate that being the case this year. And yes, Bobby Wagner, football player, Bobby Wagner, linebacker, there are limitations. There are guys that are perhaps better athletes for sure at this point. There are guys that certainly have more range and coverage, but he's still an excellent player against the run. And I feel like some people think that I'm just like gassing him up because, he's the leader. No, Bobby Wagner as a run defender is still excellent. Excellent. I watch every snap of the All-22 all season long. Bobby is consistently where he needs to be. The run fits, like their issues with that stuff is often in front of him. Defensive lineman getting out of gap. Frankie at sometimes tries to go make plays. The safeties can get a little sideways. The corners don't always do it. Bobby, at an outrageously high rate, he's not perfect because nobody is, but at an outrageously high rate is doing what he's supposed to do in his gap where he's supposed to be, and he's a sure tackler in a league where tackling has gone by the wayside. Incredibly valuable piece, especially for a team that is hopefully going to have more pieces around him to be good against the run in 2025. But you're probably, if you were to replace Bobby Wagner with another linebacker, even one who might be a little better overall, you're probably going to get worse against the run because he's that good at it still, which is why he was a second-team All-Pro. Against the pass, yeah, there's limitations there. Absolutely, in terms of the range, the coverage that he has. He's not as dexterous as he was as a younger player. He's not as mobile as he was as a younger player, but it's not like he's a stiff. He's out there still understanding pass concepts, and he can get to certain spots on the field to be disruptive because he's smart enough to know what's coming and has seen everything. And I think the other thing about him as a pass defender is he was an excellent blitzer last year. Luvu was one of the best blitzing linebackers in the league. I actually thought, Frankie was more effective in terms of a pass rusher as a blitzer than he was when they would line him up on the edge and say, hey, go win one-on-one against the tackle. Or line him up somewhere else, say, hey, you got to win one-on-one against a lineman. No, him as a blitzer, timing things up, being able to kind of dip around guys into gaps. Like that's where Frankie was special. But Bobby was also good, and that dude blitzed violently. He would blow up a running back. Blow up even guards, centers coming through the middle there. So the fact that you now have year 2 of Luvu and Wagner being able to play together off of each other, and I think the hope is that Jordan McGee can understudy, and hopefully, by next year, we're like, hey, Bobby's decided to retire. If he retires, or if he's going to move on, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll be back. I'm not trying to put a cap on Bobby Wagner's career before Bobby's ready, but that Jordan McGee can be the long-term solution as an understudy there, or at the very least, they know whether he can be the long-term solution. But he gets a few more minutes this year, but he gets to do it under the wing of Bobby Wagner, one of the best to ever do it. First ballot gold jacket kind of guy. And, another 100 tackle season, and it's him, Fletch, and a couple other guys that are there at the top. I mean, getting to play here. I think that's the other thing. And I'll actually let you guys hear from Bobby next. There were a couple of bites from this press conference that I thought were really great. One was talking about Dan Quinn and the relationship they have. There's also some about talking about playing in Washington. And I want to go back to a moment in the locker room after one of the games this season, when Bobby talked about what it's like to play knowing that he's playing in the same position in the same town that London Fletcher did. Because I definitely think that, while it wasn't going to overcome, a couple $1 million price difference if there had been a snag in the contract, that means something to him too. And it probably means something larger for the organization as well in terms of the caliber of player and the caliber of person that wants to be here. So we'll get to all of that and some thoughts on the release of Jon Allen next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. I'm Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Alex Ovechkin closing in on Wayne Gretzky. We'll talk about it with Clinton Yates for his Friday visit coming up at 4:30. Our weekend preview still to come. Take command, some mock draft thoughts in hour number 2. And then there is no hour number 3 today because we got Nats baseball here on the Team at 980 as the Nats and Mets facing off in spring training action. And Charlie and Dave will be coming at you at 6 o'clock down from spring training in Florida. I can't believe it, Ant. We are getting close to baseball season.
I know, man. Looking forward to it.
Are you?
We got to do a bit during the season where I ask you questions about our Nationals, and we see how well you know the team.
I feel like we are getting close again to two bits that we do that have been favorites, which is we need some kind of college basketball conference game with Denton.
Yep.
Which we did last year, which was a lot of fun. And then we need a baseball Is That Guy a Washington National game with probably Toby. You know what's fun about if we do it with Denton again?
What?
We can do it live from Denton's office.
Oh, yeah, because it's around the corner.
Yeah, because Denton has an office now. At least that's what YouTube told me. If you would like to go inside Denton's office, just go to youtube.com/@theteam980, where this here radio show is streaming live. Okay, so Bobby Wagner spoke just about an hour ago to a group of reporters, Zoom style, as is the case here in 2025. And I thought there was a couple of interesting things. First, I mean, just the basic question that John Keim asked, which is like, why'd you want to come back? And Bobby, of course, does this without even testing free agency. So what was it about Washington that he wanted to return?
I just love what we're building here. I love the team. I feel like this is the place. You always want to be in a place where they want you to be here and they accept you. And I think we got unfinished business to do.
So, I mean, it's simple. It's straightforward. It's all the things you'd expect. But again, like, think about where we were a year ago. They hadn't signed anybody yet. We still are 2 months away from Jaden being drafted. Like, we're still Dan Quinn hadn't coached a practice, nevertheless a game. Like, the way that the perception of the franchise is, where now it's like Myles Garrett is on Radio Row at the Super Bowl being like, yeah, you want to know where I want to go? Washington. Bobby Wagner's like, I don't even want to hit free agency. I want to go back to Washington. It is a true testament to what they built. And I do think like some of the history and stuff matters. I was saying before the break, like Bobby's reverence for London Fletcher, like can come through now. And there is real reverence there, having talked to Bobby about it during the season. And, he just seeing it, how he looks at London across the locker room when talking about the records that they now share for like 100 tackle seasons and some of the other ones where they're like one of 2 or one of 3 or one of 4 guys who have done this crazy linebacker thing. And that stuff doesn't matter when the team is a nightmare and on fire from the inside. And now you have just a steady presence in DQ. You have some certainty as much as you possibly can in this league at quarterback with Jaden. There's just so much to why a guy like Bobby Wagner would be like, yeah, I want to come back. And then the fact that they're good at football, the unfinished business portion. But I think that the truth is, like, I think Bobby likes playing for Dan Quinn, and I don't know that he wants to really play for anyone else at this point in his career. And it's interesting because there's 2 guys on this staff that have that. There are a number of guys who say like, yeah, DQ's my guy. We know that, and I'm not saying that like they need to re-sign this guy, just that he's followed him around. Like Dante Fowler clearly loves playing for Dan Quinn because he follows him around everywhere. And last year he signed for basically the league minimum, and they got double-digit sacks out of the guy. I don't think that Dante Fowler should be back in the role he was in last year. I think they need to upgrade on the edge. But if you want to tell me Dante Fowler's back in a third down pass rusher role, like I'm fine with that. But he is a guy that's like, I just want to play for Dan Quinn. I think Bobby, not that that's the only guy he play for. I think if he had gotten a free agency, like going to play for Pete out in Vegas would have been on the table for him. But like DQ is one of the few guys that Bobby Wagner at this point in his career wants to play for. And on the other side of the ball, like Zach Ertz has said, the only guy I want to play for is Cliff Kingsbury. So the fact that they have these coaches on this staff that as people and as football coaches are so good that some of the best players, not just in the league now, but some of the best players of the last 2 decades in this league are like, that's my guy. That's a good thing. And these younger players that are developing the relationships with those guys, they got nothing but good things to say either. But Bobby was asked about the relationship with DQ after Dan, and I thought it was a great setup of the question by JP Finley, where he's like, unprompted in his press conference at the Combine, DQ was like, right now, Bobby Wagner is somewhere getting better. What is it? What is your relationship like with him, and what does it mean to you to hear something like that from your head coach?
It's an amazing bond. Like I said before I got here, we were trying to make this work. A couple times where he was at, and it just wasn't able to do it. And so just the belief that he has in me, the belief that he has in what I have and what I have left, and it's just a blessing because I think, no matter where you at in your career, whether you're a rookie or whether you're a veteran, having somebody that believes in you, that cares about you, that wants to see you succeed is always going to help in your growth, no matter what point you are in your career. So, being able to build this with him, collaborate once again, it's been really, really fun, and I'm so grateful that we were able to figure this out.
I think that's great on a couple of fronts. First and foremost, the fact that Bobby Wagner going into year whatever this is year 14, I think, for him, is going to be like, yeah, I just want someone who's focused on my growth. Like, what growth? You're Bobby Wagner. You're growed. You did it. But that's not how his mindset is. He's like, I want to see how I can get better, because the thing about the NFL is it's always changing. And also the thing about him as a player is he's always changing, right? He's got to learn how to become better at the current version of him. Yeah, he knows how to use younger, more athletic, more dexterous, more rangy and mobile Bobby Wagner. How does he make this version at 34 years old work on an NFL football field? He's got to be open-minded about that. And then the other thing that I think is genuinely hilarious, Anthony, is he's the first part when he's like, there's other places where he's been where we tried to make this work. Cowboys fans must be sick.
Yeah, gotta be.
Because think about when Bobby's been a free agent. I guess there probably was a point at some point when Dan was in Atlanta, but he was pretty locked in Seattle at that point.
Yeah,
was Bobby, but those years where he was at the Rams and bouncing back and forth to the Seahawks, and where was DQ?
In Dallas.
Where was Bobby Wagner?
Elsewhere.
Yeah. Darn. Dang. Yeah. hate to see it.
I love that for the Cowboys.
I love it for people who dislike the Cowboys. I was never a huge Cowboys hater. I was just like, I worked down there and, covered them, and there were all that kind of stuff. But there's always, they're just objectively annoying. Even when I was down there, I was like, Jerry's annoying. Now, they are so easily hateable. And it's not even hateable. They're just easy to laugh at. They just can't get out of their own way.
It's a lot of wishful thinking going on down there, man.
It's like it's like they buy pants that are too big, and they keep tripping on them and falling over. And you're like, "Hey, do you know what pant size you are?" They're like, "Yeah, this is my size." And you're like, "Okay, your legs ain't that long. You're just gonna keep on tripping." And then they bang, fall over every time. I don't know why this is the analogy in my head, but it makes sense. It's like, hey, you could just buy pants that fit. You could get them hemmed. Could get them restructured. Nope. It's going to keep tripping and falling.
The
Dallas Cowboys since about 1995. Anyway, that's the Bobby Wagner talk. Oh, I forgot to mention, Jon Allen also got released. Oh, we'll talk about Jon in the 5 o'clock hour. We'll get there. He deserves his moment. But that's some early thoughts on Bobby Wagner. How about some thoughts on Alex Ovechkin? He is about to break in the next couple of weeks here, very, very, very likely, Wayne Gretzky's all-time goal-scoring record. And Clinton Yates has been watching his career since he was living here in D.C. as just a Caps fan. Barely, I don't even know if Clinton was in the media yet. When he started in 2005, 2006, way back when, he being Ovi. Now on the brink of history, Yates is going to join us and talk a little bit about what he thinks of Ovechkin. And I don't know if y'all heard about the Darren Pang one-trick pony thing. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but I'm going to bring it up to Clinton and see what happens, because I wonder if he does. So that's next.
only tricks there are hat tricks, Gregory. What? The only tricks there are hat tricks, Gregory. What are we doing here?
The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Short show today. Get all your Hoffman Show while you can. We're only on until 6 o'clock. Got hoops for you coming up afterwards. And right now, though, it's a Friday. This part of the show is not getting cut. Clint Yates is here. What up?
What's up, man? How are you? I'm good. I am, it's cold in Los Angeles today. Like, under 40 degrees at night, Gregory. Not like fake cold.
Okay, yeah.
Not like fake cold. All right, I'm wearing actual jackets and beanies, so just know that. Anyway.
Your body adjusts too. Like, people used to always give me crap, and I would complain about it's cold. Did you go to Syracuse? I'm like, yeah, I was used to be 15 degrees when I was in Syracuse. By the way, I was raised in South Carolina, and I don't live in Syracuse anymore.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
It sucked then too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, what are we doing? So
there are no misgivings about how terrible those winters were and the seasonal depression that came with them, where you stare at the ground. You ever walk backwards to class? Because I did.
Nobody likes that, and I don't wish that upon anyone either. You have proven nothing to me, tough guy, by living in the cold. Nobody.
No. I always like to joke with folks, my fellow Syracusians, that I don't think that's an actual word, but it is now, that I, in transferring there, had to do half the winters and got the same degree. So I win.
Smart man. Well played. Yeah.
I did. Also half the tuition, but that's a different story. So, Mr. Yates, we would like to talk, of course, currently Los Angeles's, but DC's own Clinton Yates. You've been watching Alex Ovechkin his entire career. He is now on the verge of history, steamrolling towards doing it this season, steamrolling towards doing it like next week, the way he's playing right now. It's insane that he's doing this. Like Wayne Gretzky, if you think of the untouchable records in sports, you have like Jerry Rice's receiving records. You have anything Wayne Gretzky did. There's a couple of others along that. Cal Ripken's streak. You know, there are just this golden select few that are supposed to be untouchable. What do you make of the fact that Ovechkin's about to take one?
There's so much to this on multiple levels, Craig. The number one thing is that I think if you're in the mindset of a DC sports fan who's rooted for local teams your whole life, and you're the type of person that really enjoys the idea of our guy is the best, and we've got this one guy we can talk about that you don't have, you're never, ever going to get something like Ovechkin ever again if this happened in your life. Not once. People for generations going past will be discussing Alex Ovechkin and his play. And I think that in the modern sports world, where it's very much about trash talking city to city and my favorite player is better than your favorite player, it is so easy to take Alex to take him for granted that now that he's at the record, I think we've literally lost track of how absolutely incredible this is. And if you go back and you look at those old highlights, Gregory, it's not just like he was some compiler. This dude was the most exciting player in hockey for a smooth decade. And you could argue with the Sidney Crosbys and the rings and all that. But I cannot believe that this is actually happening in my life and we're actually looking at it. And he's not limping to the finish line, Craig. He's out here banging people out with gray hair. There's an outside argument that this was the single greatest accomplishment in the history of DC sports. Never mind all of this other stuff with the NHL and hockey. And I just want people to understand that, because at its surface, hockey is kind of othered in DC. You know what I'm saying, Craig? We somewhat famously did an interview on the street before a Stanley Cup final game, and there's very much the hockey fans are hockey fans. This is something that every DC sports fan needs to be all on board for.
No, it's incredible. And it's funny because I pulled up his hockey reference page, and like there's been about definitely 2 times in his career where it's like, okay, we're finally winding down here.
Yeah.
And then he just kicks it back into high gear. So in 2016, 2017, he has 33 goals that season, right? And this is someone who's scoring mostly 40, 50 goals a season. It's like, okay, we're finally seeing a downturn. Come back next year, drops 49. And you're like, oh, okay. A couple years go by, 49 in 2018, 51 in 2019, 1920, he's got 48. And then he drops off to 24, although that was, I guess, 2021, that was the COVID year, so
Short
not really
season,
a drop off. And then even a couple years ago in 2022, 23, it's like, 42, like that's still really good, but it's not the 50. And he's just this year steamrolled it back. Last year, he's only got 31, but still, like the fact that we're saying like only 31 goals, like that's a fantastic season. And like his ability to just keep doing it. And I think the thing that's been really interesting here, Clint, I don't know if this like made its way out to you in following this week, but there was kind of this, I think it's a total BS controversy. Like Darren Pang made a comment in a game while doing a breakdown that was basically like, he was a one-trick pony, and now like Spencer Carberry has got him moving around more. And like he didn't mean it in like one-trick pony. I think that's how like your face right now is how people took it. But it was like if you hear the audio and like understand the context of like this is setting up a video piece in a game to show and give credit to how Ovechkin here in year 742 is scoring from different spots on the ice as opposed to just posting up in the office and blasting. And he talks about how like he was stubbornly great at that one thing, and it's the most dangerous weapon ever. But like this dude has evolved late in his career. Like that is a credit to him. And I just thought it was funny that a lot of DC people were like, "Oh my God, how offensive! He called him a one-trick pony."
Right.
And it's like, hey guys, quit looking to be so offended. Like open up your ear balls. It'll be fine. But I just think like the way he has evolved, like yes, he has been more of a goal scorer than a quote unquote complete player like Crosby. And there's always going to be that debate amongst the hockey sickos. But like if the trick that you're one, he's not actually a one trick pony. Two, the trick that he's best at is the most important thing in the sport. And I think we should celebrate that as opposed to fighting over whatever else people are fighting over this week.
Trash about Alex Ovechkin saying blah, blah, blah. He shouldn't be jumping around like that. Respect the game. Get out of here. This guy's been scoring goals at a time when goalies have big, bulky pads taking up 85% of the net. They actually know how to play the position. When Gretzky was playing, with all due respect to the NHL, remember when JJ Redick said that Bill Russell was playing against post office guys and plumbers? Similar situation, dog. And I'm not trying to diss anybody, but it was just a different position. Guys played upright. They just didn't move as well. Getting shots on goal was easier. If you were that skilled, you were going to do it. The era for era comparison, Ovechkin has a harder road to hoe. And people always wanted to say, oh, well, he's never going to win the big one. Guess what? They won that too. There is a lot of inherent bias in this because of who he is and how he approached the game. He did not care about the decorum of all this other stuff. Again, he's Russian. Don't think that bias doesn't leak into this somehow. And the fact that he plays in a so-called subpar hockey market, I think made it easy for a lot of people to kind of diss him. But one of the things about this that I think about all the time is, can you imagine if Theodore had his way and moved this team to Alexandria? People would have had to go to friggin' National Airport to see a statue of Ovi. This was like my main concern about moving the arena, is that the statue belongs at Gallery Place. It should be ready upon retirement for him. Forget the goal record to some degree. Forget the Stanley Cup to some degree. He's the single most important hockey player in this city's history. This record is literally a cherry on top, no pun intended, to Don Cherry, that you just cannot argue against. And I just feel that, like, I don't ever know if it's ever going to be correctly rated in the pantheon of things that has happened in DC sports. I hope it happens at home. I could selfishly wish that it happens out here against the Kings in a week so I could see it. But no, I don't want that. I want it to happen right there on the home ice, and I want people to go insane for an hour. I don't care who they're playing. You talk about non-broken records or records you never thought you were going to see broken. I am still I think about this all the time. So glad and so lucky to not only be able to watch that guy, but root for that guy and have the task potentially completed while I was alive, while we were young, so to speak. Don't take this stuff for granted, guys. It's just too good. It's really incredible. I don't care what the rest of the hockey world says.
No, and again, I don't think that like it was meant to be an offensive comment. But I also, if you add all the context of what you just said, like you get why people definitely took it that way. When you talk about the DC sports Mount Rushmore, if you will, or Pantheon, or whichever, however long you want to do it, like is he the only guy that's inarguable on that list?
I think so, and that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, who else? At least in my lifetime, there's just nobody else. I mean,
right? Because like if you think of the other franchises, right? Like who's the best wizard of all time? Probably Wes Unseld. Like
no, he was a bullet. You know what I'm saying?
Wizard bullet. But
I know, but Gregory, there's a bit of a difference there.
No. But if we're doing an all-time DC sports,
yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But my point is that you actually do have to consider those two different things in a weird way. So it's obviously Wes in some way, but if you're thinking about just local legends, I mean, Wall is on the concept of the list in that you would probably retire his number if you hadn't run him out of town. You know what I'm saying? Because people
and they
actually
probably still
liked
will
him.
Anyway. They should.
Exactly, but Ovechkin is inarguably the best player.
Right.
Like, not even close.
And how many other all-time top 5 in their sport players have we had in this city?
I mean, what, we're going to go all the way back to Big Train? You know? Walter Johnson? Like, I mean, that is from such a totally different era where they didn't even allow black people to friggin' play. You know what I'm saying? So, like, that's the thing about it is that if you really take it pound for pound, you can't really argue with them. There's an outside, way to look at this to say that John Thompson is probably on that Mount Rushmore more than any player even belongs. I've said that before on this station and elsewhere. He's the most important black man in the history of DC sports, but he didn't play in DC. Sasha Ovechkin is just the likes of which we're never going to see again. And if I was a dad in DC, I'm a dad in LA now, the highlight tapes would be on loop. You would not stop watching Ovechkin highlights in my house. Couple different eras of the team, got the Stanley Cup. I'm so happy for him that this is actually happening. This guy can retire with a smile and walk away. He hung around to do it, and he's actually going to get it. Caps fans deserve it, no doubt about it.
And oh, by the way, they're good.
Right! They're not some slapdash squad where he's skating around doing extra shifts for no reason. Carbs has them boys moving. Yeah. It's one of the better stories in sports in the country right now that I think is being overlooked, but that's DC sports, kiddo.
If only there was a guy who had a national radio show.
We're getting there. We're getting there. I might talk about it on TV today. You have to tune in to find out.
Clinton and Friends. You can check it out mornings on ESPN Radio. Check it out in the ESPN app, and of course, we're coming. What are we gonna do when are we gonna do something on this show for Around the Horn? The blessings.
Yeah,
we're coming down the final stretch here.
I don't have the emotion to do that right now.
Yeah,
when
we're not going to do it right
that
now.
Final week, I will have a lot to say because there are a lot of stories I can tell about sports journalism, Around the Horn, Eric Ride Home, all of those productions that happen literally from the district. Yep. I will certainly have a lot to say, Gregory.
All right, so we'll do that then. While you can watch Clinton on Around the Horn, do it. And that's coming up 5 o'clock. All right, Clinton Yates, everybody, with us here for his weekly visit on the Hoffman Show. We got more for you next.
Perfect. Alrighty,
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.
Coming up at 5 o'clock, we haven't done any mock draft work in a while, and rather than just do it on our own, Logan Paulson and I take a look at Dane Brugler's latest mock draft. Super interesting. Coming up at 5. Right now, though, a little bit of NFL breaking news, and I'm trying to decide, Anthony, how much I care about this. I'm doing this in real time. Typically don't do this. But the Titans have let go of their sack leader the past couple of years, and it might actually, I think I might have read he's like one of their all-time sack leaders, which tells you something terrible about the Titans franchise. There's no way that he's got more than like Javon Curse. Anyway, Harold Landry, who was a Pro Bowler in 2021, had a knee injury in 2022, came back and had a 10.5 sack season in 23. 9 last year, has been released. He's an outside linebacker, but also lines up like as an edge player in their 4 down stuff. And Anthony, I'm just watching his sacks right now. I'm like, let's see what we can learn real quick. So we want to do a live Harold Landry film breakdown because that's what free agency dreams are made of.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Come on.
Okay. On this one, so I'm 3 sacks in right now. By the way, thoroughly enjoying it because the last 2 have been on Aaron Rodgers. They've all come on 3rd down, so they're all like pass rush situations where he's lined up as an edge. 2 of them have been on stunts. This one looks like out of a blitz situation against Tua. It's a 3rd and 6 in the first quarter against Miami. Oh, he's just unblocked. That's a good get off. Gets the corner. Bad protection call. Slide the wrong way. All right, so we're 4 of 9 sacks in, and he hasn't just won one-on-one yet. And again, this is the worst film breakdown that's ever going to be on the internet, but that was a pretty good get off. And Drake May steps back up, and okay, got that one. So again, that one he forced May to step up. He just flies off the edge against the absolute abysmal offensive line that is the New England Patriots. Drake May steps up. He goes back underneath. Bang bang, sack. Okay. We're in a 32-27 game in the 4th quarter against Houston. Oh, this one's a safety against C.J. Stroud. What happens here? Oh, he just bull rushes the tackle, and then CJ tries to escape where there's no... What is CJ Stroud doing here, man?
Point shaving.
Yeah, it looks like it. There ain't nowhere to go, CJ. What are you doing? Yeah, he just gets right in the tackle. That's a good bull rush. And then CJ runs right in the stack. Step up in the pocket, bro. That's who's 71? Titus Howard? Yikes, man. That's a bad rep from him. We're going to get a Mac Jones sack in here? But this one's on a 1st and 10. Off of play action. All right, here's my half-baked thoughts on Harold Landry. Great motor, good quickness, not like an amazing one-on-one pass rusher, but like I think a lot of pass rushing is finishing your opportunities. And he seems to, when you watch all of his sacks, I have to see on the pressures and the stuff that he misses. It's easy to think a guy's really good when you watch a sack reel because all you're watching is his sacks. But what you do see is like a pretty high motor. And if they're looking for a potential situation, like to me, he's a guy that if you don't re-sign Dante Fowler, Harold Landry is interesting to me. Or if you want to get younger because he's 28 years old, instead of Dante Fowler, who's older than that, you could go for Harold Landry. But he's a rotational pass rusher. You don't sign him and be like, that's our number 1 guy. There's my 3-minute scout on Harold Landry by watching 5 plays. Because that's sports radio, baby.
I think you have an accurate...
Yeah, as our resident AFC South expert.
Yeah. Now, I mean, me personally, I wasn't too big on Harold. I think what you described is like who he is. Situational, rotational guy. Wouldn't be my number 1 or 2. He's cool, though.
Pick a number 1 through 18.
17.
Okay. Week 17. The Titans faced the Jags. We're just gonna watch a couple of random. We're gonna watch a couple of random first downs here. Just get a better feel for Harold Landry. Let's see where he's lined up. Man, I can't believe I'm sitting here watching Titans Jags. Yikes! That's a nothing.
Week
play.
17, when both teams stunk and they were trying to tank for draft position.
Yep, that's the one.
Nice.
You picked the game, bro. Does a decent job squeezing down against the run there. Yeah, look.
He's all right.
If he's inexpensive, like he's another guy that goes in the mix. He's in the possibles bucket.
I think I would prefer to lean on John Baptiste and, some of the younger guys, though. That is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but like I do think they need, if it's not Dante Fowler, they need a Dante Fowler type. They need like a guy with some pass rush know-how who can come in on third downs and do some stuff. And if Harold Landry is now in the bucket of candidates for that. But is that fix their defensive end problem? No, you still need the Josh Sweat, the Trey Hendrickson, they need a 1. They don't have a 1. Dorrance Armstrong's I think a very solid 2. Who's your 1? That's what I would like to know. And that guy might come in the draft, but you can't count on that because I said yesterday at this time, you have to treat free agency like the draft doesn't exist. But there's another guy in the free agent pool. It's Harold Landry from the Titans. Okay, when we get back, Logan and I, speaking of the draft, we're gonna treat it like it exists because it does. Dane Brugler's mock draft was mad interesting earlier this week. Logan and I broke it down on Take Command. We're gonna let you hear it next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. This hour, we say goodbye to Jon Allen in about 15 minutes. Of course, cut by the Commanders today. And then we have our weekend preview, which is, Anthony, brought to you by...
Nobody, Craig.
Yep, still the case. Still true.
Getting ridiculous, man.
Yeah, it's been ridiculous, but, all we can do is what we can do. We just keep doing the weekend preview. Even though no one wants to sponsor it, it's good content. We'll get you set for the weekend in sports. But here on a Friday, in lieu of not my beat today, top story, NFL draft is getting ever closer. It's mock draft season. And Logan and I had a good time breaking down Dane Brugler's latest mock draft because Dane's one of the best. I so much respect for the way he goes about it, and he's super plugged in. And when we saw who got mocked to Washington in this draft, we were like, oh, we got to talk about that. And so we did on the latest episode of Take Command, which is available in full, including plenty of free agency talk as well in your podcast feeds. And this is actually how it ends. Take Command is this right here, our chat about Dane's latest mock draft. Wrapping up here on Take Command, little draft peek here at the end, coming off of Combine Week. Everyone's doing their mock drafts, and we wanted to go through one by our pal Dane Brugler of The Athletic because it was super interesting on a lot of fronts. It starts, Logan, the same way that basically every mock draft from every insider is starting now. It seems like the Giants are going to make a trade up to one. They're going to trade with Tennessee, and they're going to take Cam Ward, the quarterback, out of Miami.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things. Like when I haven't done a ton of quarterback evaluation in this draft and for this draft because again, like the Commanders don't need it, so I'm going to waste all my time doing that.
Right.
But in the limited evaluation that I've done of Cam Ward, he seems like he's definitively in a different tier than Shedeur Sanders. I know they've been kind of clumped together since the beginning, and I really think this is one of those things where like you watch a lot of film, you kind of feel that way as you're going through it, and then after the draft when all the agents meet and stuff, that becomes kind of the definitive piece of information. And so I do think also it shows kind of how desperate New York is and that staff is to kind of maintain and keep their jobs. And so if there's one guy that can turn it around for you in this draft at the quarterback spot, it definitely feels like it's Cam Ward. So I actually would agree with this on the limited eval that I've done. I haven't done my big board yet and all that stuff, but this makes a lot of sense to me. And it, like if Tennessee stayed and picked, I think that's also something very viable. But I do think you sense and feel the urgency from New York in this situation.
For sure. And if I'm Tennessee and I'm not sold on Cam Ward, this is such an easy decision for me.
Yeah.
Like if you think Cam Ward's the guy, you should take him because that's why you have the number one overall draft pick is take a quarterback. But if they're like, I don't know, just get a good football player and then you're probably bad again. And then maybe next year you're back in the same spot. And that's kind of what Houston did, right? They took Stingley, who's now one of the better corners in all the league, and then they were bad again, and then and especially like I know they probably feel the heat locally in Nashville, just like the Texans probably felt it locally. But like all due respect, you're the Titans, you're a little bit off the national radar. Like it actually buys you a time that, by the way, a team like the Giants don't have. The Giants can't just sit back and be like, because the pressure is so high on them. But if you can sit back for a year and start, for them, I don't know if they do Levis again, but in Houston, it was Davis Mills, and they were like, we'll give him a couple years. And then they wind up with CJ, and then off they go. They hit the ground running immediately. So I think that's not a bad play to get Travis Hunter, obviously, for them, or Abdul Carter if Cleveland goes another direction, because I think that's the other interesting thing here about this. Most people still have Cleveland taking a quarterback with Shedeur at 2, but there's also a lot of teams that seem to like they're out on Shedeur. There's a lot of mixed stuff coming out on him. And they're also, Dane was saying yesterday on their show that he thinks there's some teams that are going to have Shedeur as quarterback 3 in this draft. So the gap between Cam and Shedeur might be bigger than Shedeur and the next guy. So you could see him as it is in this draft falling out of the top 10 entirely.
Yeah, and that's something that I think makes a little bit of sense to me. And just from what you're hearing, coming out of the combine, that people weren't that impressed with him. So it makes a lot of sense. And I think when you look at Abdul Carter, like if he's not the first pick, he definitely should be the second pick. And him going to Cleveland like that, and they keep Myles Garrett somehow, like I don't know how you throw the football on that team because you got 2 guys who are really dynamic rushing the passer, right? I think the other thing interesting was Travis Hunter. Had a couple conversations with people who still are having a hard time classifying and quantifying what he does, because they're like, in a normal, if he was just a receiver, he wouldn't be a top 10 player. If he's just a corner, is he a top 10 player? And that was an interesting conversation to have with people. And because he's doing both, he's a top 3, he's top 5 player. So I think that's an interesting kind of, we've talked about that a little bit, but
yeah, I think it's worth mentioning though. There are some of the analyst types that I talked to that came on the show that are like, that dude would be the number 1 corner for me in this draft by a lot. So like there are mixed reviews on him, especially as a corner, and people that think that he's like a dude at that outside corner position.
And that's what I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I do think there seems to be a slight disconnect, and I think it's because of his technical inefficiencies at the position between NFL people that I talk to and, like media people that I talk to. So
interesting.
Just take that nugget.
Interesting. So Hunter goes 3 in this one. Armand Membu, first tackle off the board, first O-lineman off the board. He goes 4 to the Patriots instead of Will Campbell, who goes 5 to Jacksonville. I feel like that was another thing coming out of the week. There's just a lot more people that think Membu is definitely a tackle. Campbell might be a guard. And he's a freak athletically. And even though he's young, he's only 20 years old, he's super mature on and off the field. So, like, what is there not to like?
Yeah, and just, again, seeing, this is one of the things about the Combine that is probably a pro and a con, is seeing them next to each other. It's like,
yeah, you mentioned this on the show earlier in the week.
Yeah, one of these guys looks like an NFL tackle. One of them doesn't. And Armand Membu just fit the bill, right? He measured well, he ran well, he moved well, and he's big. He's huge. He's thick in the torso. He's got big arms, big bones. So I think that's one of the pros maybe of coming out of the Combine for him, is that people got to see him next to the other big time guys, and he just looks the part.
For sure. Ashton Genty at 6 to Vegas. That's interesting for sure. Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, to the Jets at 7. Shamar Stewart, who in our PFF inspired mock that we did, somehow fell to the Commanders at 29 in our mock draft 1.0. We told you that was not going to happen. Here he goes 8 to Carolina. Tyler Warren, tight end out of Penn State, goes 9 to New Orleans. And then Tyler Booker, guard. This probably is not going to happen because Dane did this a couple of days ago, and now all of a sudden, Tooney and Jackson have been traded for. But it tells you what kind of talent Tyler Booker is, the guard out of Alabama at 10.
And I think it shows you also the value of the meetings, because his film's good. He's a good football player, and again, he was my highest rated interior player for sure. But every single person that talked with him, that came out of a meeting with him, just said he is the teammate. He's the best teammate in this class. He's the best leader at the offensive line position outside of maybe Will Campbell. And that's where you see the value of that intangible stuff showing up in the meetings, I think.
All right, 11 through 21. This is so interesting.
Yeah.
Michael Williams, edge out of Georgia, goes 11 to San Francisco. Tet McMillan, he's your first receiver off the board, 12 to the Cowboys, playing opposite of CeeDee Lamb. Nick Amanawari, safety from South Carolina, 13 to Miami. Hearing Dane talk about him on their show really got some intel that teams love this dude. The competitiveness, the intelligence, on top of the fact that he was the freak of all freaks from a size, weight, speed standpoint.
Yeah, and I'm still kind of on the fence with him with regards to the film, in my opinion. Like, and it's probably a little bit of like stereotype. You see a big dude, I want him to violently want to hit people. But in terms of movement skills, it's all there on film. He can play man coverage. He's got good instincts in the pass game. He runs well. He's a decent tackler in space. Don't watch the Alabama game. It's his worst game of the year. He looks terrible in that game. But other games over the course of this year, you see that ability. And I don't know, man. He's special. He's unicorn special. And so obviously, like, this seems a touch high for me personally. But again, when you see an athlete like that and the film supports it, it makes a little bit of sense, I think.
Yeah, especially when you hear Dane talk about like his teammates, the way they talked about him. I think there's a tight end from South Carolina in this draft, and Dane was talking to him at the Combine, and he was basically like, yeah, playing that dude in practice was terrible. Like, he's so smart. He's always where he needs to be, communicates really well. So there's just a ton of stuff to like for Nick Amanawari, someone who in a lot of mocks was around for Washington to pick at 29. Here he goes 13. Colston Loveland, tight end, Michigan, goes 14 to Indianapolis. Jalen Walker, edge, goes to the Falcons. They finally get an edge. Donovan Ezaraku, edge. He goes to the Cardinals. Will Johnson, corner, to the Bengals. Jahad Campbell, linebacker, to the Seahawks. Mike Green, edge, goes to Tampa. which just feels right from the uniform. Like that dude's like a big, angry dude, and he's going to play for the Bucks. Of course he is. Omarion Hampton, the running back out of UNC to the Broncos at 20. I think that's going to be a very popular mock selection. And then Shedeur winds up going 21, and that's how Pittsburgh solves their quarterback problem. Shedeur to the Steelers.
Yeah, and I just think it's interesting kind of like how deep this defensive class is. You know, the ability for Ezra to rush the passer, for Walker to rush the passer. Like, again, I'm a little bit out on Walker at the moment because he measured really unusual. He's under 6'2". He's about 240 pounds. He's got short arms, but the juice is in film, right? So it shows up there. And to see Mike Green going again outside the top 15 feels right to me personally. But again, he's going to be a dynamic pass rusher. Jahad Campbell can rush the passer, and then have the second running back go at 20 is also kind of surprising. But again, I think it just speaks to the positions of strength, defensive line and running back in this class.
For sure. And there's no offensive linemen in that group. So, like, you have the couple, you have, or I should say the three, Membu, Campbell, and Booker go in the top 10. But now all of a sudden you got the linemen that are getting pushed down, and that's going to create an interesting situation for Washington at 29. 22, Matthew Golden his 4.29 40 going to the Chargers. The wide receiver from Texas, Derek Harmon, defensive tackle to Green Bay. Kelvin Banks, the tackle, maybe guard from Texas to the Vikings. Gary Zabel, one of the best interior linemen in this draft. Played a lot of center, might be a guard. He goes to the Houston Texans. Emeka Egbuka, God, if he goes to the Rams, that just feels so Ramsey.
It'd be perfect for them.
Just like the most professional receiver in the draft, and he's going to go play for Sean. Of course he is.
And he plays like both those guys. He plays like Cooper Kupp in his prime. He plays like Puka Nacua. Like that. Like I remember watching him, I was like, this is, if he goes to LA, that's where he should go. That's where he should live because he's a heck of a football player.
Jahdae Barron, speedster, DB. He goes to the Ravens at 27. Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle, to the Lions at 28, which means your guy, Logan, Josh Simmons, falls, the tackle from Ohio State, all the way down to 29 for Washington. Real quick, just to round it out, Maxwell Hairston and his 4.2, whatever he ran, 4.2, 8.40 to the Bills. Josh Connerly, tackle from Oregon, to the Chiefs, and then Walter Nolan, defensive tackle, would replace Milton Williams for the Eagles. But this is both encouraging and discouraging, I think, on the Josh Simmons front. It's encouraging because, hey, maybe the Commanders have a shot at the guy who you think might be the best pure tackle in this class. But the only reason he's getting this far is because the medical clearly scared some teams if Dane's dropping him this low.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, like, I would defer to Dane because he's really dialed in and really connected. But anybody you talk to, like any scouts, front office people, like I say, who's the best tackle? It's like, oh, Josh Simmons. Like that's kind of definitive. So obviously, if he's here at 29, I'm really happy. But I'm also my heart's kind of doing a little flutter because I'm like, well, where's he at with the medical? If he's here, does he need a red shirt for a year? What's the development look like? Is he ever going to be back to that same athlete that he was before? I don't know, but this is awesome. This would be awesome for the Washington Commanders because he reminds me of Darisaw. He reminds me of, kind of that the movement skills of Trent. Like, they're not the same player, but like that's the kind of athlete that he is. And so of all these guys we just talked about, I think Membu could be special at tackle. I also think Josh Simmons could be special at tackle. So for the command, and again, like Connerly goes 31. So obviously both those guys are still here. I think both those guys would be excellent selections for Washington, no doubt. But if I had a preference of maybe anybody in this whole class, it'd probably be, Membu or Josh Simmons. So for him to be here at 29, I think is a pretty fantastic thing, especially given all that conversation we just had about how hard it is to find elite offensive lineman in free agency.
For sure. And it's worth mentioning, there's a couple other tackles that are also available, including like his teammate, Donovan Jackson, who, when I asked Lance Zierlein, like, of these guard tackle guys, if you had to bet on one to play tackle, he's like, I'd bet on Jackson. Like, I know he played a ton of guard, but like, I think that dude's a tackle. And so there are some evaluators that have been doing this a long time that really think he is a legit bona fide starting NFL tackle, and he's still available as well. So if the board falls like this and the Commanders have their choice of tackles at 29, there are a lot worse ways that this can go for Washington. I think you'd love to have maybe some of the edge guys still available, and Dane has a run in the teens, but if that pushes down a bunch of O-linemen, sick. Go get your left tackle, move Coleman inside, and that be that. That's our show for today. We'll be back next week. We don't really know when. We're going to see how some of this first day of free agency pans out. Obviously, Monday is when the league year, the tampering period opens, so guys can sign on Wednesday is when the league year officially opens. So I could say guys can agree on Monday, sign on Wednesday. Trades can go through, including the Debo trade. And that happens at 4 o'clock. Lucky me, I host a radio show that starts then. I'll catch you all on the radio between now and then. Again, on the team at 980, 4 to 7 for the Hoffman Show. You can also get more from Logan, Command Center podcast, and more from the Commanders. For Logan Paulson, I'm Craig Hoffman. We'll see you next time on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. All right, that from Take Command, which, of course, you can listen to in your favorite podcast feed, or full episodes available to watch at the Team 980 on YouTube. When we get back, Jon Allen's time in D.C. is done. We put a bow on it. And then at 5:30, it's our weekend preview on The Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. We are going to hit you with a big old weekend preview. Anthony, you have never, ever been as excited for the weekend preview as you have been for this one.
No, I have not, sir. I'm looking forward to it.
There's just a lot to preview.
It's too much going on.
There is so much going on. You also said you got like 5 things for real things.
Yes.
You just this last half hour, because again, we're done at 6 today. Nats, Mets coming up, spring training baseball at 6 o'clock. This last half hour is about to be the Anthony Haney show. It's called the Hoffman Show. It's about to be the Haney show.
It's exciting.
He's ready. He's ready. He's well produced. I will say, I do want to. We don't have a lot of time to talk about Jon Allen, but Anthony, the top of your headphones look ridiculous. You got like this little,
a little sticker.
Yeah, you just want to take that thing off. You want to put it back on. Pick one.
It just won't. It won't stay down.
Never seen a man with alpha headphones.
Yeah. All right, there it is.
Do you get the reference?
Yes,
okay,
I have seen The Little Rascals. I love The Little Rascals. One of my favorite movies. So yeah.
I got $1. I got $1. I got $1.
Hey. Ooh, what you know?
We work in radio. We're probably more about the nickel version. Anyway, Jon Allen is done here in D.C. The team letting him know this morning he has been released. And like, I actually, we've talked about Bobby a lot earlier on in the show. And it's like, we'll see if we get to talking about Jon as well. Like, we kind of did the Jon Allen bit, which is why, like, I don't want to be dismissive or rude or anything. Like, Jon was a very good player for a long time. And I think he tried really hard, especially earlier in his career, to be a leader. I think he took on leadership roles that were outside of where he was most comfortable, maybe even as time went on, having to be a little bit more vocal. And I think he played hard for the majority of his career. I also think, though, that very simply, like, Jon Allen has ideas about how he wants to play that are different than the ideas that the team has for him. And if you combine that with the salary, this was a no-brainer. And I don't want it to get confused that it being a no-brainer to let him go, it means he actually stinks, nor that he can't go somewhere else and be good. Because he was good, frankly, when he came back after the injury this year. It's some of the best ball he's played in 2 years. And I think that if he winds up in a place that allows him to be like a penetrating 3 technique, which is what he is, like, that could be a really, and especially like in pass rush situations, he'll thrive in that role. He'll be really good. But is he, at this point, his highest and best use is not a 3-down lineman. Now, can he start in this league and be effective? Yeah. Is he ever going to make another Pro Bowl? Probably not. Are there some problems sometimes against the run where he doesn't anchor very well and he gets pushed? Yeah. But I think there's probably defensive coordinators out there, and frankly, here that if he could be a more of a rotational piece, where he could be really good. And I don't know. Like, I saw a guy, Anthony. You ever come across Brandon Thorne's work?
Nah, I haven't.
He's like
not
one
off
of these,
the top of my head.
He's one of these guys that does a lot of like O-line, D-line work on Twitter, and like, he's an analyst. Like, he's got more than just a Twitter account. He's got like actual podcaster, website. I think he's got a website. It's like an O-line specific website, and he's like, Jon Allen's been criminally underrated, and I was like, you settle down on the criminally underrated. I think people, when they knew anything about the Commanders for the last couple of years, like, oh, their interior guys are so good. Allen and Payne. And I think to an extent, Washington fans have probably underrated him because there's been a lot of frustration with that group. And now we are down from Montez, John, Duran, and Chase to just Duran. But it doesn't mean, like, it's somewhere in the middle. Like, I actually think Jon Allen's properly rated for the most part. Like, he's a very good football player who is not one of the very best in the league, like top 5 at his position. And he is still good. I think it's great how much they got out of him, considering there was a chance that, like, he wasn't going to sign a second contract because there was so much worry about some of the injuries that dropped him in the draft. And he was a guy that was thought, be like a top 7, top 8 pick in 2017. And it was like, oh God, is he going to fall? And sure enough, the medical was bad enough that Washington gets him at the 17th pick, and they're ecstatic about it. But I think ultimately, like, the clash with the coaching staff here is something that was non-negotiable, and something, and then the contract makes it easy. And I think, by the way, a year from now, we're probably having the same conversation about Daron Payne if he doesn't have a significantly better year than he had in 2025 or 2024. The good news is that this is a very deep defensive line draft. It's probably the deepest position in the draft, and it is also a halfway decent defensive line free agent group. Little less powerful at the top with Odigizua re-signing in Dallas, but like there's some interesting players down the list that maybe stylistically are better fits with Jerzon Newton, who is a small, undersized, penetrating 3 technique, aka exactly what they replaced, or they're trying to replace in John, and Duran, who's a slightly smaller, more penetrating type 1 technique. Can they get the Sheldon Days and those kind of guys? Can they upgrade over that and like get this defensive line where they want it? I think it's going to be interesting, but that's the bow on the Jon Allen career here in DC. When we get back, it's time for our weekend preview. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 for another 27 minutes before we give way to Nats and Mets. Also live on YouTube until 6 o'clock when our show ends at the Team 980. Anthony, it is time for the weekend preview brought to you by...
Nobody, Craig.
One.
Nobody, man.
Please contact our sales department if interested. All right, Anthony, you are super jacked about this weekend preview. So what is it about this weekend that you are so excited about? I have some things I'm excited for sure. I mean, the ladies are playing right now conference tournaments. We got the men final weekend of the regular season. Where do you want to start? And there's some great NBA stuff.
I want to start on the NBA front,
all right,
especially after the Lakers come from behind one of the New York Knicks last night. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, crazy ending to that one. LeBron just barreling down the lane, gets the kick-out three to Gabe Vincent in the corner. Love that. Jalen Brunson hits a big shot. His ability to create shots is just insane.
It gives me James Harden 2.0 vibes just because, like, he constantly draws the foul. When James was in Houston, ripped through,
James
finished
is
through the
6'7" and just, like, so big. And Brunson's ability, like, you're not wrong stylistically. I mean, part of it is probably because they're both left-handed, and, like, we're just like, left-handed, crafty, because that's what all lefties are. But, like, they are not like a crazy athleticism thing. They're just like, they figure out how to get to their spot all the time.
Yeah. So, Lakers, they're in action Saturday night. They take on the Celtics. And I'm expecting that to be playoff atmosphere. The Lakers, winners of 8 straight. They're 12-2 since acquiring Luka. So they're rolling. Then you have the Celtics. They're getting healthier. Peyton Pritchard and Derek White, they just combined for 84 points. Did you see how many threes they hit?
That's crazy. No, I missed that one.
Pritchard was 10 for 17, I think, from 3. Whew. No, 10 for 19 from 3. And then Derek White was 9 for 17 from 3. I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of threes. They combined for 84 points. So they're rolling right now. I'm excited for it. Lakers Celtics Saturday night, 8:30 on ABC, baby.
Low-key, great game at the same time if you got League Pass. Pistons Warriors. The Pistons have been really good this year. Like Cade Cunningham's a dude. He's averaging 25.5 points per game and 9.4 assists per game. He's actually got better numbers than Steph. Steph's averaging 24, 6, and 4. Cunningham 25, 9, and 6. And they have the same exact records. This game at Chase Center out in the Bay. But yeah, Lakers Celtics, that one is going to be an absolute banger. Wizards, by the way, this weekend, they're in Toronto to take on the Raptors on Saturday. And then good games on Sunday, too. Nuggets, Thunder at the top of the West. You got that one, 1 o'clock on ABC. Suns, Mavs. Obviously, would have been more interesting not that long ago, but the Suns have a couple of big games this weekend. Every game for them is really kind of big right now. And then, let's see, any other big ones down the list? Not really. Kings, Clippers, I guess is kind of big down there in the kind of the middle of the Western Conference. Harden had 50 the other night.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
and that was after Beasley said James Harden is easy to guard, and then he went out and dropped 50 on him. I said, good gracious.
Harden, yeah, when he's annoyed, he's just like, all right, you guys want to? Do I need to remind you who I am?
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes.
All right, let's get to the men, and then we'll get to the ladies in the conference tournament. For the men, the biggest thing right now is seeding. Like, can these teams lock up seeds for next week's conference tournaments? Like, if you're in the Big Ten, you're trying to get double bye. All these tournaments, basically, at this point, the big ones have these double byes because if you even make the tournament in the first place, because the conferences are so freaking big. Couple of games tonight, Purdue, Illinois, South Florida, and Memphis. Top 25 action. And then, of course, this weekend, things get crazy. Big East, St. John's at Marquette. That's ranked on ranked. Kentucky at Mizzou in the SEC, ranked on ranked. Wisconsin trying to secure a double bye in the Big Ten, trying to stay ahead of Maryland. They are the 12th seed hosting Penn State, 1 o'clock this weekend. Let's see. Where else? We got Alabama, Auburn, round 2. That is 2:30 ESPN on Sunday. Northwestern at Maryland. Maryland favored by 10.5 in that one. 3 o'clock on Peacock, or you can go at the Xfinity Center. 3 o'clock again on Saturday. On down the list, Duke, North Carolina. Cooper Flagg's last, presumably, regular season college basketball game. That is Duke, Carolina, 6:30 on ESPN. Houston, Baylor that night, 10 o'clock on ESPN is a pretty big one as well. And then let's see, on Sunday, you got Michigan, Michigan State. Michigan State wins. They're the 1 seed in the Big Ten. Michigan's trying to get back in there after their loss to Maryland earlier in the week. So that one is Sunday noon on CBS. And then we get to the conference tournaments ongoing. Right now, Cal, Notre Dame in the ACC, which is so freaking weird to say. I guess we're not in weekend preview. We're in right now, Anthony. It's the game that's behind you on television. 26-20, Notre Dame up on Cal. Cal had a huge win yesterday. Hannah Hidalgo, 10 points, 2 rebounds, and assists, a steal for Notre Dame early on. By the way, if you want to see some potential future Mystics, you might watch this game. Olivia Miles, Sonia Cintrone, certainly prospects to go for that number 3 or number 4 overall pick in the WNBA draft, which the Mystics hold. Let's see, where else are we here on the scoreboard? Ole Miss, Texas tonight in the SEC. That's a quarterfinal. Nebraska, UCLA quarterfinal in the Big Ten. Iowa State, Baylor in the Big 12. That's a quarterfinal. ACC in the quarterfinals as well. Louisville, Duke, Florida, LSU in the SEC. Iowa, Ohio State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. Earlier today, NC State edged out Georgia Tech by a point. TCU, Oklahoma, Michigan. Michigan knocked off Maryland, by the way. Maryland got off to just a heinous start in this game. 27-6 first quarter, Anthony.
Yeah, but then Maryland marched right back. They got right back in it. And
they did. There was a 31-14 second quarter, but then this problem was 28-12 Michigan in the third, so they wound up losing by a billion. Southern Cal beat Indiana. South Carolina advances. North Carolina and West Virginia, your other winners earlier today on the women's side. The schedule in terms of everything over the weekend. Big East quarterfinals are tomorrow. Big Ten semis. And then on Sunday, won't let me go that far. So you got some finals on Sunday. You got some early, like the Big East final is not until next week, obviously, with the quarterfinals tomorrow, including Paige Beckers and UConn hosting St. John's at 1 o'clock. All right. Other than that, other things going on this weekend. Spring training baseball, including Nats and Mets, tonight here on the Team 980 at 6. The Washington Spirit open the NWSL season tonight. They're on the road at Orlando Pride. It's the NWSL Challenge Cup. So basically, Anthony, the idea, the Challenge Cup used to be a tournament that they play like during the season. It originated back in 2020 as like the COVID replacement season. I know, because I was there. That was still when I was working for the Spirit. We all went out to Utah. It was a whole thing. That was our bubble. But it's evolved over the years, and now they do what they do in a lot of other leagues in the world where they have like 2 of the top teams from the prior year. And the idea is that the Shield winner, the regular season champion, faces the actual champion, the winner of the playoffs. Orlando won the double last year, so Washington is the second place finisher in both, is going to play Orlando tonight. So they're down in Orlando. That's 8 o'clock on Amazon Prime. Again, if you want a little bit more on the season, we have a huge preview up on the Hoffman W Sports YouTube page and the Hoffman W Sports podcast. By the way, we also did a big Mystics offseason recap today that's up. Jen Hatfeld from the Next, their Mystics beat reporter, joined me for that. And also the Amazon Prime, like behind-the-scenes documentary for the NWSL, Talk to the Director, that's up on all the W Sports pages as well. And then, speaking of behind-the-scenes documentaries, Anthony, arguably the biggest story in sports all weekend. The biggest behind-the-scenes documentary show is back. Netflix's Drive to Survive, the Formula One docuseries, is back. It is out today. I'm almost a little sad that I'm going to be watching the soccer tonight because I so badly want to dive into it, but I think I'm just going to save it for tomorrow and Sunday. I'm going to intermix Drive to Survive and live basketball. That's going to be basically my entire weekend.
Sounds like a very chill weekend. Relaxing,
Yes.
feet up,
Yes.
low maintenance.
That's the goal. That's
I
the
love
goal
that for you, man.
And that gets me rested up, rearing to go, because Monday at noon, the legal tampering period opens. So
Yes, sir.
you must be with us live on Monday. Otherwise, you will miss something. Breaking news all around on Monday. So kick back, relax, enjoy the hoops, enjoy the documentaries, enjoy all the sports, all the things this weekend. And then It is here, NFL free agency on Monday. When we get back, we will, as that was our weekend preview, brought to you by
Nobody.
We got Real Things, Real People set into real microphones. Also brought to you by Nobody. Next.
Here's
Wrapping up here on the Hoffman Show. Yeah, you're an hour early. No, we're not. Baseball's kicking us off the air. Oh, darn, we have to go home early on a Friday. Anthony, how sad are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, I'm devastated. Devastated. Go Nats! All right, Monday, very simple. Here's the plan for Monday. Breaking news all show long. I don't even know if we'll have any guests because there's a chance for Jeff to be like, hey, sorry, you can't really, we gotta go because the Commanders did X, Y, Z. So Monday at noon, legal tampering starts. Kevin Sheehan gets our coverage started. Russell's got it throughout his show. We'll pick up the baton at 4 o'clock, and we'll run as fast as we can all the way through Wednesday when the league year becomes official. At that point, we'll have announcements from the team. You'll see all the pictures of them signing, and Debo trade will be announced, and that'll all happen on Wednesday. 4 o'clock is the deadline there. Obviously, free agency continues into that. It's just it can all become official. But Monday is when all the news will happen, so make sure that you're locked in to us on the radio, on the app, on YouTube, wherever it is you want to watch or listen. As for this show, it wraps with the real things real people said in real microphones.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, let's get into it, shall we? Let's start off with we were talking about Drive to Survive, Anthony, and George Russell, Mercedes driver. He sat down on Jose Andres' podcast and described how his diet has actually changed during his career as a Formula One racer.
So, through the season, I'm guessing that you have love for foods that you cannot even think about eating, because every pound counts.
I mean, Japan, I've got this amazing little restaurant, family run. We go there, we sit on the floor, they make the food in front of us, and it's just incredible. Probably the best meal I've ever had in my life, and we go there every single year. I have to change my diet quite a lot during the race weekends, because when we're racing, you're strapped into the cockpit. So we've got the belts across our weights, through our crotch and over our shoulders. And when you're going through a corner at 180 miles an hour, everything is moving around, including everything in your stomach. So when I first started, I used to have, some porridge in the morning, quite a big breakfast, and having, my first Formula One race, going through corners at 180 miles an hour, porridge for breakfast was not a good idea. So I actually have very simple carbs on race day. We're always changing the diet based on what is required in the moment.
Porridge. You understand the sacrifices that these has to do to be a Formula One racer?
George Russell, British as British could be, is sacrificing porridge, Anthony. What did you do to come to work today?
I didn't do that.
Nope. You do battle the Beltway, though, so,
Yeah.
That's DC's version, I guess, of the sacrifices that must be made. This one's so good. Shaq's podcast, T-Pain was the guest, and he talked about the song from Jay-Z called "Death of Auto-Tune."
When Death of Auto-Tunes came out, how'd that make you feel?
Sucked at first. Everybody wanted me to look more into it, but I'm like, nobody else is going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, the fans are just going to hear what they hear real quick, and that's going to ruin. And the thing is, here's the thing. If me and him was beefing or something, or if me and him had words or anything like that, I'd been like, this is fair. But I had never met the man. And then, him and I talked it out. And it was cool. He was like, nah, just, I see people doing what you're doing. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But the way you did it, it was a quick ass thing. It wasn't like a long conversation. You know what I mean? People can say what they say or whatever, and they can try to explain it. But if somebody make a song called Basketball Players with Podcasts, it's whack as hell. You're like, and then they come to you like, well, I wasn't talking about you. And it's like,
was there ever a moment that you're like, man, I just square that off with Jay-Z real quick?
No.
It's
one of the most powerful rappers in the whole industry. What the hell am I going to do? I just got here.
So he was saying he wasn't talking to you. He was talking to all the other guys.
He was talking about rappers.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he was saying rappers using it.
I'm not gonna lie, Anthony. I might want to make a song called "Basketball Players with Podcasts Are Whack as Hell."
Oh my gosh. See, look, you trying to start something. I don't think Jay-Z was trying to. Maybe he was trying to start something.
No, I get what Jay-Z's saying on that one, where it's like, hey, it's one thing of like, and one, like, for people that don't know, T-Pain can sing. Like, really T-Pain a cappella is incredible. Auto-tune was like an instrument, basically. Like, it's meant to enhance the song, and like, it was a stylistic choice. If you want T-Pain a cappella album, like, it would be a sick album. He can actually sing. But you know, when the rapper started doing it, yeah, I think that was his point.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's too many basketball players with podcasts. There are some that are doing it well. But like, everybody doesn't need a podcast. Some things you can leave to us who, you know, journalists by trade. Trained to do it. And as I lob that grenade into the media sphere, we wish you a very happy weekend. Mets Nats next.